Hey, this is Chris Kluche, forward for the Bandits, and you're listening to 716 Sports Podcast.
Welcome back to the 716 Sports Podcast, recording here live on a Monday, coming to you on a Tuesday, March 19th here, bringing you full updates since the last time we were here with you. The Buffalo Beauts play in their fourth consecutive Isobel Cup championship. The Buffalo Bandits travel up to play the Saskatoon Rush. The Sabres played hockey, mostly, sometimes, hopefully.
Somewhat.
As always, everyone, you can find these episodes everywhere your favorite podcasts are found: on Facebook at 716 Sports Podcast, on Twitter at 716 Sport Podcast, on Apple Podcasts, on Podbean, on Spotify? Work in progress?
Newly, officially on Spotify.
Perfect. You can find us on Spotify. I like Spotify. I'm a big user, so that's a big one for me and all us Androiders out there that don't have Apple Podcasts. Just most importantly, we ask that if you like the podcast, that you share it, you tweet at us, you comment on our posts, and let us know what you think. We're always here for you. This is a podcast by us for the people in the 716 Sports community, so always happy to get the feedback from everyone here involved.
So we ended our last show with asking people if they preferred Frosties, Blizzards, or McFlurries.
Yes.
We had an overwhelming response for Blizzards.
I think
that's the right
fair
call.
We had one Frosty.
They all win.
But I really think the Frosties are an easy third here.
I've never had a
I
McFlurry
don't
because I've
hate
never
that
gone to
take.
McDonald's with a working ice cream
That's what I was
machine.
just going to
you know,
say.
and
You
I
can always get a Frosty.
And I took this into consideration when I thought this is an easy third because the ability to add a crunchy treat into these two Blizzards and McFlurries make them the top two easily.
But McFlurries, you cannot get in a chocolate variety, and I am a big time chocolate guy.
That is true.
So, like, if I get a Blizzard, I make them make it with chocolate ice cream.
And Frosties are available
Frosties
in
are
both.
Correct.
We'll debate this later on, but I just wanted to share that with everybody.
Great.
I do not hate that take.
Thanks. Mine or his?
You got Mike's endorsement
all
of
of
food
them.
take, Justin.
All of
That's all
them,
you need to
yeah.
know.
All the ice cream is good. Just in.
Yes.
This just in. Breaking news. Ice cream is delicious.
Coming at you hot and live with cold takes about cold food and talking about the hottest team still in Buffalo. The Buffalo Bandits travel to the West Coast. And, you know, at points it wasn't pretty. In the fourth quarter, it looked like it might slip away from them. But an overtime victory again from guest of the podcast and Chase Frazier. And before we get too deep into this Bandits segment, we would like to point out that because of Chase and Kluch coming on the last couple weeks and mentioning how much they love Jets Pizza, we decided here while recording that we're trying this for ourselves. Justin ordered a pizza and a half from Jets Pizza that we are eating in between talking, and I think the reviews so far are positive from the four of us in this room.
Solid.
Let me clarify that you say pizza and a half. It sounds like a lot of goddamn food, and we're not that fat.
We're fat. We're not
So
like
it's
extraordinarily
it's
fat.
deep dish pizza. One is 8 small squares. Not small.
They're decent.
They're corner
squares.
pieces.
8 quarter pieces and then 4 quarter pieces. So it's not.
He's trying really hard to justify how much pizza we're eating.
Yeah. Either way, it's clogging my fucking heart.
Yeah, you know,
That's good.
that's how it goes.
It's thumbs up.
Carry on.
But another overtime winner from Chase, another big Bandits victory, a playoff seed that was officially secured by Rochester losing the previous night, maybe with a little bit more emphasis with that overtime win against the always difficult Saskatchewan Rush.
Yeah, the Rush are struggling a bit this year. They actually had a 3-game losing streak, which is unheard of for them since the move to Saskatchewan. They win that championship as the Edmonton Rush and then move to Saskatchewan and just continue to be a juggernaut. And this year that has not been the case. They are not even, I don't think they're in first place in the West right now. I think that is still San Diego. They play San Diego this upcoming week, so that'll be a big game for them. But ultimately, a solid win for Buffalo. This is a team that, the type of team that they're going to have to beat if they're going to make a championship run. It also might very well be the team they have to beat if they go on a championship run. So a huge win for them. As you mentioned, Jeff, overtime. It kind of felt like maybe I was amiss. The Bandits managed to survive 3 early penalties, and I think in the third quarter build like a 9-6 lead. And Evan Kirk, poor guy, Evan Kirk goes down on a Dane Smith bounce shot. And if you want to, I mean, if you can visualize what might have taken him down, a bounce shot takes down Evan Kirk.
What Steve is trying to tell you, everyone, is that Evan Kirk took that ball directly in his genitalia.
I mean,
square on the nuts.
yeah, and to the point where he was escorted off the field and did not return. So every single one of us, all 4 of us males in this room, just felt our balls crawl up into our stomachs
I can
a little
emphasize with Mr. Kirk.
bit. Yeah. I mean, it just
to a level that I did not want to before the game started.
Yeah, but anyways, so then Schutz comes in, the backup, and the Bandits immediately start to open up on him a little bit, and you could tell he was a bit of a deer in the headlights, and they took advantage of that, built a nice lead, but lo and behold, there's a Mike Messenger, with 4 goals, including a beautiful shot to the far post that beat Vince, and Vince was not happy about it, but he squeaked it in, and then all of a sudden, it's 11-11, and what felt like Buffalo might have finally rode off into the sunset with a win was not to be.
And at the same time, it feels like one of those games that the Bandits teams of the last couple of years would have not been able to bounce back from mentally, but I think the fact that they were able to recover themselves, get a really good chance in the dying moments of regulation that did not go home, and then go to overtime and get that beautiful Chase Frazier goal that they did get to win the game. I think the teams of a couple of years ago that were not striving for first place, or maybe not achieving it, I shouldn't say not striving, not able to achieve first place, that's a game that would have gotten away from them, but this team sat down, recollected themselves, and they played their hearts out in that overtime. It was a great overtime, too, between those two sides.
Is that a nice way of saying that they were the last place teams that they had a few years ago?
The last
I
2
mean, yeah,
years,
that a couple of those
brutal.
teams in the last couple of years were just, it was tough.
We can't
to watch
forget
them.
3 years ago they went to the Cup final and
Yeah.
lost to Edmonton, but the
No,
last
not that
2
team,
years,
but yeah.
But you mentioned it's interesting because as good as the Rush have been, the Bandits have never lost in Saskatoon Center in regulation. Or I'm sorry, in the regular season. They did lose the Champions Cup out there, but they have owned the Rush in regular season. And you also can't forget last year, Mitch Jones, the hero, with 5 goals, I believe, and they were losing something. They were losing by 6 or 7 goals at the half, and just absolutely opened it up in the second half and won that game in overtime as well. But Buffalo just seems to have Saskatchewan's number. And now if you look at the standings and how big that was, you're going to want to be the number 1 seed in any situation, in any sport. But especially our guest, Evan, talked about recently that the home teams in the East are something like 21-5 this year. So
Yes.
the teams in the East that are playoff teams are 21-5 at home.
So
if Buffalo can secure home field throughout the playoffs, that would mean the semifinal at home, the East final at home, and then 2 of the 3 of the NLL Cup finals at home. That's huge.
Your update in the standings as it is here today. Now, not every team has played equivalent games. Buffalo is 11-3. They are currently in first place in the East.
And the whole league.
In the
Just
whole league.
Plug that in there.
Georgia is 10-4. They've also clinched. They're a game behind the Bandits. Toronto is in third. They are 8-3. So they've played 3 less games at this point than Buffalo. And the game that Buffalo has coming up here this weekend is a significant one in the standings. Not just because it's another game for Toronto, but Toronto has a chance with a victory to take the season series from Buffalo.
And Toronto and Georgia played the night before. So this could really set Buffalo up. If Toronto can beat Georgia and give Buffalo that cushion, and then Buffalo beats Toronto, I think that's best case scenario if you're the Bandits.
It gives Buffalo
Sounds
a full
about right.
2-game lead atop the standings. That would move Toronto to 9-4, Bandits to 12-3, and Georgia to 11-4.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, sorry, to 10-5, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got New England at 7-5, pretty comfortably in 4th place, although not untouchable. And then Philly and Rochester are both 2-10. And just to close it out, we talked about the West. San Diego 7-4, the Rush are 6-5, Calgary's fallen to 6-7, and Vancouver and Colorado are both 4-8. So some chances there for that middle, and that's wide open out there in the West. And when we talk to Evan here in a little bit, chance to get his opinions on whether he thinks San Diego was going to run away with it or. I mean, it's so hard to count out the Rush. And you saw there in the 4th quarter when Matthews starts getting going a little bit, when Messenger is going, it felt like that team wasn't clicking offensively for a lot of the game. And that was a game that getting his 11th win now of the season, Matt Vins might have stolen that one a little bit. And there wasn't like that one save where you thought like, wow, like that might be a turning point. But he just made so many good saves in that game that kept them in that game.
I think the only goal he may have wanted back was the 11th one. And knowing him, he'd have been pissed, probably. Maybe I'm speaking for him out of turn, but if they didn't win that game, I know how competitive he is. He probably would have been livid that goal to tie it is the one that he would have wanted back. And it was a beautiful shot by Messenger. So Messenger's right at the half wall, like the equivalent of being between the face-off circle and the boards, and he winds up and lets fly to the far post, and there was not much room there, and he found it off the post and in. And, Vince is frustrated, I'm sure, because it's kind of an outside shot from a bad angle, but when it's Mike Messenger. It's a great shooter.
It's a shooter's going to shoot kind of play for Messenger, and he put it where he had to put it. With Vince's 11 win as well, worth noting that he has a chance on Saturday now to break the all-time single-season wins record for a Bandits goaltender. He already has 11 now. That ties him for the record. 12 would break it, and he's going to have a couple chances still with 2 more home games remaining to break it on the home field, let alone any trips out west as well.
And it looks like to me, based on last weekend when they played him back-to-back, that I don't think they're starting Higgy anytime soon. This is probably a thing that Vince has earned it. It's interesting because they talked about how the Bandits carry a third goaltender, right? Devlin Shanahan's a third goaltender. And Vince said in his entire time in Rochester, they never carried a third goaltender. And Shanahan doesn't get a lot of looks even in like shoot-around in practice. And a lot of times the starter's going to want to let the other guys kind of have it. And Vince's attitude is, I don't get enough practice. We practice once a week and I have a morning shoot around. He's like, I want to face every shot I can. Like, give me all the rubber because I want to stay sharp. So that being said, I think Vince starts every game this year.
Shanahan might have the easiest gig in pro lacrosse at this point. It's the old Billy Joe Hobart third string quarterback gig from the 90s, although Hobart unfortunately had to learn how to play at some point. But the Bandits now 11-3, get to come home, and it can't be understated, Steve, how big this game is for them on Saturday. And we alluded to it there a moment ago, but the season series with Toronto very much hanging in the balance. Toronto has all the games in hand to tie Buffalo outright in the standings, so you can't give them that breathing room to come back. This is a Toronto team that beat Buffalo in the home opener, so you know what they can do, what they are capable of doing when they come and play the Bandits here in Buffalo.
Yeah, and that home opener, the Bandits built a pretty nice lead for themselves, only to watch it evaporate, I believe, on the back of a 6-goal run. And it went from something like 4-1 Buffalo to 7-4 Toronto, and that was that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, Buffalo never was able to recover from that run that Toronto put on. Toronto's a phenomenal team. Nick Rose back there, he looked human last week. Calgary beat Toronto 15-9. Calgary put in 15 goals on 44 shots, and for the first time all year, Nick Rose looked human. He's been so great, and you can't forget Schreiber and Challen Rogers, and their transition game is so good, and they're so athletic. You know, they're very similarly built to Buffalo. Solid goaltender back there, athleticism on the back end, shooters on the front end. They're a great team. And as we said, this is a barometer now where Buffalo is not the same team as they were in week 2 when they lost to Toronto. This is going to be a barometer. As I said, these are the kinds of teams that you are the types of teams you want to beat in a postseason run. But the other reality is these are the teams you are going to have to beat in a postseason run. So we'll learn a lot about the Bandits this upcoming Saturday, the 23rd. Also, just worth noting that tickets are the Bandits are expecting big numbers for both of these last 2 home games. The estimation is that both games will see over 15,000 fans. That's unofficially, but just the Bandits have a feeling.
I think that's reasonable.
The Bandits have a feeling that barn's going to be pretty full these last 2 games.
It's been getting noticeably more and more packed as the season has gone on. I think the lockout and the drama with all of that and things getting dragged out hurt early season attendance, especially that first home game being so close to the holidays and everything. But the last couple of games, it feels like the energy is back fully in that building. And I know like a lot of Bandits fans out there have been going the whole time, but I think they've gotten a lot of the casual fans coming back in, remembering how fun it is. And that building has just been alive. And part of it is the fact the team is so successful. It's easy to go and support a team that goes out and plays as well as they do every time they hit the home floor. But I think this is going to be a fun game. Toronto always travels pretty well, and it's a big game for both those teams, a big chance for Buffalo, and especially if Toronto can do them the favor you mentioned and maybe beat Georgia coming into Buffalo, a chance for a big opening in those standings here for the Bandits. It'll be a full 2 games.
We saw Buffalo come in from Philadelphia last weekend, and that struggle. Georgia's a longer trip, and as far as I know, unofficially, Toronto's not even taking morning shoot-around in Buffalo. So my guess is after Georgia, they're going to sleep down there, fly in on Saturday, go straight to the hotel, and they probably won't see the floor until it opens at 5:30. So that's, if you can pounce on them when they're tired, or maybe they'll be even better because they played the night before. You never know how it works, but, Buffalo will be well rested on their home floor while the Rock will be dealing with, playing 2 games in less than 24 hours. So we'll see how
similar scenario to the Bandits, what they had to deal with last week coming back from the Friday night road game back to the home floor here. So we have a guest coming on here. I'm going to mess up his name, Steve. So I'm going to
Evan Schemenauer.
Evan Schemenauer.
Yes.
I didn't want to mess up 2 consecutive Bandits guest names on the podcast.
Chase Schemenauer.
Chase Schemenauer.
Evan Schemenauer. Cloutier tier. Chris. No,
but
Evan Schemenauer from Lax Class and from Random Thoughts on Lax All Stars. He's a great asset to the sport and a great ambassador for the league, and he's got a lot of good stuff to say.
And he was on the call on color commentary for the Bandits game at Saskatchewan here last Saturday. And let's take a moment here and talk to Evan.
Welcome back to the 716 Sports Podcast. We are honored to be joined by a guest who I believe is calling from the furthest distance away of our Bandits guests, and maybe ever. I don't know. You guys, I don't know if anyone can beat calling in all the way from from Saskatoon. But we have Evan Schemenauer on the line with us today. Evan, we appreciate you taking some time out to chat lacrosse with us, especially because you just did that for like 2 hours on your other podcast.
Actually, well, it was not too bad. We still got to do one interview tomorrow morning, but yeah, it's always good. A lot of games to talk about, and luckily my broadcast partner, Jake Elliott, had a horrendous week in picks, so I got to chirp him for about 15 minutes straight.
Good. All right. Well, Evan, for those that don't know, I've obviously known you on a bit of a personal level, but also in a quote-unquote professional manner for a few years now, and you've become pretty prominent in the NLL coverage rings out there. But give us a little bit of background about how you got to this point, because we all know that Random Thoughts, well, for lack of better terms, is what put you on the map. But tell us about how you got to this point.
I got quite the weird history in lacrosse. I actually didn't pick up a stick till I was in my 20s, and a little unusual, but you grow up in small town Saskatchewan where there was no lacrosse. It just wasn't an option. And it was in my 20s. I moved to Bermuda, of all places, and I got an email one day from a guy that said, looking to start up a lacrosse program here, looking for guys. I've got equipment. And I'm like, you know what? I've always wanted to learn how to play. This is my chance. And I had been a fan of the NLL for some time because it was televised back then, but this is the chance I had to play. And I mean, we were shooting at parking rails and garbage cans. I think our first net was PVC pipe and fishing net. I wish I was kidding. And then eventually, we got a little better at what we were doing. And then by complete fluke in 2006, Bermuda gets a spot at the World Championships. I'm off playing at the World Championships. I still claim this to the day. I'm the worst athlete on the planet to play in the World Championship in 2 sports. But, quite the experience. I've had the chance even to coach the Bermuda junior national team. So lacrosse has given me a lot. And when I got moved back to Saskatchewan, I was a Rush fan for a while. First, it was just kind of the Cinderella story, but also Zach Greer was there, he actually came down to Bermuda for a while and played. So that was a great experience back then. And when they came to Saskatoon, it was a godsend because Saskatoon's 5 hours drive one way to Edmonton. So you're saving yourself a 10-hour trip just to go see a game. And about a year later, for the first year, I was educating people because people in Saskatchewan didn't know the game. So eventually somebody's like, you need to start writing this down. You're starting to repeat yourself sometimes. And, just kind of give us some background as to what's going on in the game. So I started Random Thoughts, and I thought like 50 people might read this in some dungeon somewhere. But all of a sudden, the readership just exploded. Eventually, Lax All-Stars picked up on that. And now this year, Jake Elliott had his Lacrosse Classified podcast, so we moved that over to Lax All-Stars, and he asked me to be the co-host there. And that has taken off. We were number one in that. Random Thoughts is number one. Could I have ever predicted any of this? No. I'm so stunned that this many people want to hear what's on my mind.
Yeah, me too. I mean, after the time I've gotten to know you, holy shit. I'm just giving you a hard time there, Evan. It's a pleasure working. We have our some conversations that we have and some group chats and all that stuff. So that all led to you having an opportunity this Saturday. I know that in the past you've been a halftime guest of John Gertler when the Bandits visited Saskatchewan, but now you were called up to the booth to do color, and you got to see what ended up being a hell of a game on Saturday. Tell us a little bit about your experience doing color commentary for the first time. You are speaking to a group of very experienced broadcasters,
sure,
not just me. Jeff does actually a lot between FC Buffalo and Junior Sabres hockey and UB men's hockey and the Beauts, the women's hockey team. But anyways, tell us about that, and also transition into the game. Let us know what you saw on Saturday.
It was something that it was really in the back of my mind. I go to a Rush game. I got seats 10 rows off the floor, right at the restraining line, straight across from the Rush bench. I love watching the game from there and just analyzing it to death. And people were asking me actually a season ago, it's like, when are you going to make your way into the broadcast booth? Because there was this gong show going on in Saskatchewan of play-by-play guys going through. But I'm just like, guys, you know what? I've never done this before. No way I'm doing it, right? But when John asked me there a few weeks ago to do it, it's like, okay, it's radio.
Yeah, my mom always tells me I have a face for radio, so...
Yeah, and if people can't see what's going on. If I screw something up, they're not going to know the difference. Okay, let's give this a shot. And it was fun. I have to say it was fun. Crazy game. When I got to talk to John Tavares after the game, he talked about how terrible the performance was, and I get exactly where he's coming from. Matt Vince saved the day. He just absolutely stoned the Rush most of the night. And how the heck was he not the first star of the game? I don't understand that. The Rush, I think the big takeaway from this game is, what's the health status of Evan Kirk?
Yeah, you were talking about Vino stoning the Rush, and I was going to talk about some other stones because that looked very painful, and that certainly, as much as Vince won the game for Buffalo, I'm sure the Rush missed Kirky big time back there.
Well, and that's the thing. Adam Schutz, he's a decent goaltender, but he doesn't have much experience. And when you're trying to make that push for 4 championships in 5 years, and you don't know when your starting goaltender is going to be back, and you also don't have a guy on the practice roster. So I'm going to believe that they're probably going to sign Pete Davinsky this week and get a backup, but that's a scary time. It just comes to the reality of how important that starting goaltender is.
You mentioned that Schutz, he doesn't have much experience, and when he first came into the game, it looked like it might be a little bit of a shooting gallery, but I thought he settled in quite nicely, especially in the fourth quarter.
Well, and he actually come up with what might be the save of the year in the last few seconds of regulation there.
Yeah, I think Mitski helped him there. It might have gone off Mitski's arm as well. I didn't see a replay, but...
Yeah, it was something else to watch, and but he also let in one where he just didn't get down, and it got under his stick and trickled over the goal line. Things are going to happen. He doesn't have much floor time, and the problem for the Rush, they've got a first place battle in their hands next week against San Diego, and you're not going to have your starter. That's a tough adjustment.
Well, and Evan, just a quick little, I have a very important question for you, because every Tuesday your podcast drops, Lax Class, on iTunes and all that jazz. And every week you guys do a pick'em segment. And I believe, if my memory serves me right, that it was Evan Schemenauer to pick who to win that game on Saturday.
I took the Buffalo Bandits.
Yeah, you did. And you know what? You're a smart man, because you couldn't lose. If the Rush won, you're happy. If the Bandits won, you get to put it in Jumbo's face. You just hedged your bets. Great job.
Well, actually, I've picked against the Rush twice this year, and I've been right both times.
Which isn't a good thing. You mentioned a little bit about the 3-game losing streak that the Rush had, which is unheard of for them. You mentioned that, I believe, on the pregame to the game. I did listen to some of your work today. I didn't listen to the whole game, but I listened to most of the pregame. But yeah, this has been a bit of a strange season for the Rush as far as what we've come to expect from them.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a shock to the people in Saskatchewan, and to all of them that sit there, because in Saskatchewan they've been in first place every year. They've been in the final every year. And I keep telling them, you guys forget the Edmonton days. Obviously, they don't know anything about the Edmonton days, but back in the day where Edmonton was guaranteed win night.
I remember those. Those.
It's a shock to the system that these things are happening, but I'm still thinking the Rush are going to win the West. At some stage, I think San Diego's going to start to falter. Calgary is a step behind the Rush. I still think the Rush are going to win the West. The question is, can they beat whoever's coming out of the East? But, post-game, I was having some drinks with the Bandits staff. And as we were leaving, well, maybe we'll see you in May. And the one guy's like, I hope not. really? Well, you'll be in the finals. Like, yeah, but we don't want to play you guys.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's still the reputation out there, is that the Rush are the team to beat, which is interesting considering they've lost 5 games so far.
It always feels like, just because of their history, and it feels like they're so talented they could overcome any of their shortcomings so far this season.
Like for a Bills fan in New England Patriots.
All right. Jeff has a question
real.
for you.
It's too on the nose for us
But the
here.
thing is that I'm not a Patriots fan. I can't stand them. I can't stand them more than you guys can't. But I'm a New York Giants fan. I've got the luxury of, guess what? We played in the Super Bowl twice, and you lost twice.
That's a nice ace to have in the hole there. So the Bandits, with their win on Saturday, clinch a playoff berth. Now the rest of the season will play out. We'll find out where eventually they seed. Looking at that team on Saturday, who do you think poses the biggest threat, whether it's the Rush or anyone in the West, or maybe even Toronto or someone in the East, the biggest challenge that the Bandits might have ahead of them in terms of getting to that championship game or winning the championship?
I think it's getting out of the East is the big problem. The Bandits have a tough game ahead of them this weekend against Toronto. Lucky for them, Toronto's playing 2 games on the road, so it's the second game. Maybe the Rock are a little tired. But even if the Bandits do manage to win that, you're going to be playing the winner, Georgia and Toronto, in the East Finals. That's not going to be easy. And even in the semifinal, you're playing New England, who is going to have Crawford back by that stage. So that could be dangerous. So getting out of that East is critical. But here's the stat that we keep going back to on Lax Class. The 4 teams in the East right now that are in the playoffs are combined 21-5 at home. So how critical is that number 1 seed?
Well, they position themselves well to get it, especially if they can beat Toronto here. Obviously, the tiebreaker goes back to the April 5th game in Toronto, but obviously it's a 2-game swing coming up this Saturday for Buffalo and Toronto,
But a big chance here for the Bandits to do what they need to do to keep themselves on pace for that top seed. And like you mentioned, home field advantage could be so big for them. And as a season ticket holder myself, they've played so well in that building since that opening night game against Toronto that it'll be a good shot at redemption for them here as well to get that win back on Saturday night.
Yeah, and exactly. If they lose that game, they've lost the season series. So they'd be a half game up on Toronto at that stage, but not have the tiebreak. And Toronto's got games in hand. So it's going to be tricky to see where they can how they can do it. If they have a repeat performance on defense like they did in Saskatoon, they're going to be in trouble. The Rush missed a lot of open opportunities in the middle, wide open. Mark Matthews, if he had been shooting a little bit better in the opening 3 quarters, Bandits would have been in trouble. And to be frankly honest, if Jeremy Thompson wasn't taking so many stupid penalties, the Bandits would have been in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, for sure. That was it came down to the wire in tight games. It's real easy to find those types of things in a game that finishes like that. Well, Evan, we thank you for your time. Where can we find you? Let us know where to find your work. Give us your Twitter handle. Let us know how to find Random Thoughts and Lax Class. Give us your best plug.
Well, Lax Class, just simple as that. It's at Lax Class on Twitter. It's at Lacrosse Classified on Instagram. You can find everything on Lacrosse All-Stars. Very easy to find. My Twitter handle is at Schemlax, SCHEM Lax.
Very good, Evan. Thanks from us to you. We appreciate your time on this Monday night as we record, and we're grateful that you gave us your time and your input.
Thanks, guys. Great. Thanks for having me on there.
And thanks to Evan for joining us here all the way from the West Coast. And I think unofficially he's got to be up there, if not the longest distance connection we've ever made here for this podcast. I don't know if we've ever gone farther than out there in Saskatoon, Justin, if you can think of anyone who we've called from farther out west. But
we did have Theo Fleury on.
We did have Theo Fleury on. That's way out there.
Yeah, I think British Columbia is west of Saskatoon.
Yeah. Canadian
I don't mean to be
geography
that guy,
test.
but I don't think Saskatoon's the West Coast.
No,
They're
Western.
in mountain time.
It's way more west
That would be
than
like
we
calling
are.
Colorado the West Coast. I'm not trying to. I could be way off.
It's the west coast of the Rocky Mountains.
It's west of Buffalo, so therefore it's out west.
Everything is the west. Detroit was in the west for years.
They might
If
head back that
Michigan's
way.
the west, then what the hell is Saskatoon? Anyway,
Above Wyoming and Montana.
that's pretty west. It's pretty west. It's not like
Above New Mexico, and I think that's Colorado.
You have a map open.
Yes, I
he
do.
doesn't have oven, which is good because you're testing my Canadian geography. You'll really lose me after anything west of Ontario.
Prince Edward Island.
I think that's east.
That
Yeah,
is
I know.
east. It's way
It's
east.
funny because when Rochester, the Nighthawks, announced that they were moving to Halifax, I'm like, oh, that's still pretty close to Southern Ontario for all these guys. No, it's
Nope.
not. It's like 13 hours
It's
east.
way
It's
over
like,
there.
I didn't know Canada went that far east. But anyways,
It's a
I digress.
huge country.
I am now looking for Halifax.
Anyway, while Mike looks through the map of Canadian provinces, so that was the fun of the weekend. The Bandits winning, and then Sunday afternoon was the Isobel Cup championship game, which was played in Minnesota. Ended up that it should have been played in Minnesota anyway after the Whitecaps beat the Riveters on Friday night, pretty comfortably doing so as well. The Beauts and the Whitecaps in what was truly just a great even back and forth game. 2 first period goals from Emily Falzer for Buffalo and Amy Menke for Minnesota. Game goes to the first intermission tied at 1. Goes to the second intermission tied at 1. Goes to the third intermission tied at 1 after Blake Bolden rang a clapper off the crossbar in behind Amanda Levier that went bar down and out. And then the game goes to overtime. And, you know, as someone who was watching this on a cell phone after working the Junior Sabres game on Sunday and wasn't in the building, didn't really have a lot of working sound from my computer, or from my phone, I should say, and sitting down watching that, still, in spite of how good I know the season was, and in spite of how good the game was and how well they played on the road in front of a full house that was packed an hour plus before the game, man, it sucks to keep coming up on the losing end of close games like that in the championships. Always the road team, feel like an underdog again, and just not quite able to get one more bounce to go their way. And Levier played well. I thought Hensley played incredibly, considering that I'm sure that for a lot of the week she didn't think that she was going to be starting in that game. The early afternoon news half an hour before the game is that Shannon Zavados isn't even dressing for the game due to a lower body injury.
She may have known for a while. That's typical hockey or pro sports
Obstructionist
move.
gamesmanship kind of
Yeah,
move.
they knew for a while probably.
I have a question for you guys. Is
Yeah.
Mr. Ignorant towards the sport? How long before the Isobel Cup final becomes a series? Because you mentioned how hard it
It
is.
used
It
to
was
be-
a series the
Okay.
first
It used to
year.
be a 3-game
Because you
series.
mentioned how difficult it is to come up on the losing end of these, close games, and it feels like hockey's a sport that certainly deserves, a series instead of a single game elimination.
I think it has to do with so it was a 3-game series when the players were paid.
Yeah, the first year only, it was a 3-game
And
series.
they're still paid, but not paid as much as they were in the first season. They cut the salaries to make the team to make the league more financially viable. So I think now it's tough for the girls to be away for.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough enough. There was a lot of Riveters players that didn't get to travel Friday night because they had to take the time off of work the previous week and try to get out to a game that didn't end up happening. So they had to come back home and then try to get off on a Friday. So I know, like Kim Sass, the former Beauts goaltender who now plays backup for the Rivs, couldn't go, and there's a couple other players that weren't dressed. And I think that's exactly it at this point in the state of the league. Unless they did Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 days in a row for a series, I don't know that they could do it at this point.
Yeah, it's like they're kind of like lacrosse players. They all have full-time jobs. It's tough for them because they don't make that money doing it.
Right. They can't support their lives only on playing professional hockey at this point. And that's a conversation that we have and will continue to beat to death. And hopefully we get to a point where that is not the case, and everyone who's in the NWHL, the CWHL, or whatever future league or leagues continue to exist 10 to 15 years down the road can all make their living playing hockey, and this conversation becomes null and void. But yeah, I think, Justin, you're exactly right. Until then, this is going to be probably a one-game deal, at least until they come to some sort of financial agreement with the players, or until the league expands to a point where the season maybe is a little longer and they can fit another weekend in to do it.
Nonetheless, great game, great finals game. It was
It was great for the sport.
Yeah, I think it was so back and forth, and it was intense. You could hear the shakiness, the announcers' voices. They were so into it. Great game, and regardless, Sabres didn't play. It was the best goalie in the world. Hensley is no slouch.
Hensley was fantastic.
I think Sabres got a 9.35 goals against, and
Hensley's was actually
save percentage.
higher going into the game. She had a
Save percentage.
.94. She was
Yeah.
higher going into the game. although Zebedas had played more. Yeah, I remember calling the Beauts Boston semifinal, not this year, but last year, the one that went to overtime. That announcer voice shake is real. Because, like, and of course, and congratulations to the team as well up in Minnesota. Awesome for them to do it. They did a great job. And for their first year, too, to get into the spotlight and get to do a championship game, too, very deserved and happy for both of them. But yeah, the announcer voice shake in a game like that is real. That game last year took a year off my life, going that Boston Buffalo overtime game, just like, you have to be impartial, but man, I hope Buffalo scores. I have to be impartial, but man, can please Buffalo score the entire time until Casorso did. And I think my soul left my body. So I completely get where they were voice-wise and like mental state-wise. You're like, I'm just trying to describe this, but I can't handle this kind of part of broadcasting that came through in that moment.
But what I was good at, regardless, Sabres didn't play. Hensley stepped in admirably. She played really well, saved the game a couple times. She made a really nice glove save late in the third period on a power play. They were Beach was short-handed. Saved the game. It was a low slap shot from the point and just snared it. It was real nice save. But both goals, nothing she could do about either of those goals. The first goal by Evan Schemenauer was one of the best shots I've ever seen by a professional hockey player.
Oh, it was absolutely disgusting where she put that puck. She had a hockey puck size space to put it, and she perfectly put that puck past Hensley. Don't care who's in goal for that.
And the second goal, there was a hockey puck size space in Hensley's 5-hole, and it bounded off the stick of Danny Cameronese. Shot from the point. It is a shot from the point, off the face-off, and Cameronese just standing there trying to cover the shooting lane, and it just shot from the point. It wasn't a slap shot, it was a little wrist shot off the shaft of her stick down through Hensley's 5-hole, which was closed, and her stick was there. Just found the way. It's the old Patrick Kane winning the Stanley Cup goal. It's where if the hockey puck wants to go in the net, sometimes it does. And Stecklein had not a lot of room there, and the puck just went in. And the Whitecaps in their first season in the league win the Isobel Cup. They're now the fourth team in 4 years to win the Isobel Cup. I think the parity is great for the league. I think the Whitecaps came in this year, and they were certainly favorites. The Beauts were the other team that looked like betting favorites out of the gate, and turns out that this year the betting favorites and the betting odds were spot on. Those two teams played a close game at First Niagara Center this year that went 2-1 to the Whitecaps, and so it goes again on Sunday at TRIA. That's a great building for hockey too. I love watching really
games
nice.
in that building with the windows on the one side.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful scene for hockey too. Mm-hmm. It's like when people would watch games at Harbor Center when Harbor Center first opened. It's like, wow, that's a great space for hockey. I think TRA is on that level. It makes sense they're on that level, being the Wild's practice facility as well, and the funds that come into it with the organization. But it was really cool to watch some of the angles and everything that were in that building.
Fundamentally a sound game too. I can't even really pick anything at it. If I had two qualms with the whole game, I think Danny Cameronese took had a few poor shot decisions. She had one shot early on in the first period coming down the right wing, and she fired it up high short side when she had a Beauts player coming down the left wing crashing that pretty hard. She should have shot that down low. And where she was in the distance of the net, she was really close in. And you got to put that low to the far corner. It's a really tough save for goalie to make. You got to really move quick and flash that pad really fast. Because where she was on the ice, it's a hard save for goalie to make. And if she makes a save to the far left side, that puck pops right back out to the crashing forward.
I mean, we're pretty familiar with Amanda Levier, too, from her time here in Buffalo. The way to beat her is to just keep throwing pucks and try to make her move a lot.
Get her moving.
She likes to scramble around, but sometimes she scrambles to her detriment, gets herself out of position. You have to just get pucks in traffic to the front and make her try to work her way through it. She played well, but I think at some points the Beauts made it easier for her. But becomes the third player to win 2 Isobel Cups with 2 different teams, along with Buffalo's Corinne Bowie and Harrison Brown, who did it with the Beauts and the Riveters the 2 previous seasons. So good for Lev, good for the Whitecaps, and it's disappointing. I'm trying harder not to be disappointed, more disappointed than I am, because I think that was a great showcase of the sport. And while I wished that my team was going to win the game, I think it's great for the league and a good sign going forward. I could easily see this being the cup matchup again next year, provided that both these teams get to bring back the talent that they have.
I think the Beauts are just going to retool even harder.
I mean, they've done it every year now. They've retooled. They've come back better.
Yeah, And
how good of a coach is Cody McCormick? Because everything that I've seen, it seems like, and I'm from a distance, as you guys know, I don't follow it as closely as probably I should, especially being a part of this podcast. Seems like he's a damn good coach.
Well, they had Haley Schemenauer on the Sabres intermission on Thursday, and she spoke very highly of the plan that Cody came in with. And they were 3-3 when the then general manager fired the then co-coaches. There's been a lot of change going on here in the last bit, and as soon as Cody McCormick came in, it felt like the team just opened up.
I think the turning point of the season was recognizing that the coaching change needed to be had, and then they were fired, and then there's another coaching change which put McCormick in charge. But he didn't think he was a skills coach to start the season. He would work at them with skills, and then him and Faddy took over, and then it was just Cody.
I think that meant that Cody knew from a first-hand experience exactly what each player was capable of. Retooled a couple lines, made some changes, and it just felt like he gave the offense so much more free will to go out and create. And he saw what Schemenauer and Elia and Janiga and Babstock were doing out there every shift and just completely just pushing it at every team's defense until the puck went in the net.
I think once Cody McCormick took over, you saw a whole different team schematically. They were pushing the puck up the seam a lot more, ran a stretch pass, and they just instantly became a better possession team. Like the Beauts, it wasn't even just all skill because they're a very skilled, fast team, but they had their cycle game was unmatchable sometimes. Like people don't know, the teams don't know what to do against it.
Yeah, they cycle the puck around the zone for 90 seconds, and then the other team just tries to get out of the zone, and then that same group that was just cycling the puck around goes and buries you in the corner for 30 seconds until they get a couple players off, and they just keep you pinned back there. Their ability to keep defenses pinned in their own zone is so far above what everyone else in the league is doing at this point that it is taking a Whitecaps team that is so deep, so fast, has great defense in their own right to even come close to being able to top them, and then eventually doing it. The Whitecaps won the season series 3-1 and then won the championship game as well. But it took a team that was built like the Whitecaps that had Steckline and Bouye, and you got Kendall Coyne-Schofield on the front lines. You got Levier in goal, who knows a lot of these shooters very well from her time here in Buffalo. It took a team that was basically built to beat Buffalo to beat Buffalo.
Steckline, the winning goal scorer, who was actually the Buffalo Beauts' second pick in 2016.
And ends up going there, and that's a fun little undercurrent to follow from, because of how, again, Justin mentions the situation, the reality of the money that's in the NWHL versus the NHL. Players don't always want to relocate their entire lives for $3,000 to $10,000 a year. Steckline was a player who never made it here to Buffalo, but has clicked very well in Minnesota, and she's had a couple of absolutely huge goals for them this year, in addition to just being a great defender.
I said a bit ago that if I had two qualms at the game, I just got to say one. The second one was probably the actual, the last play of the game, the goal, where Amanda Elia lost that faceoffs clean.
And that never happens either.
She's number 2 faceoffs in the league, and any defensive faceoff you can lose it. You can't lose it clean. She lost that thing right back to the point, and I think Cameron Easy probably. I feel bad I've dogged Cameron Easy twice now. She probably got to get to the point there. The winger's job on the defensive faceoff is to get right to the point, and just kind of.
I bet you Danny's used to Elia getting at least a piece of that puck
I
too.
do understand that, but it's hockey fundamentals. They're trying to block it, which is a good play too. I'm not dogging her because it's not her fault. It's a bad hockey bounce. That's how overtimes work. It's always a bad goal that goes into overtime. But
Yeah.
that's only my only two qualms. Like, that game was played so well defensively on both sides. It's the first time I've seen Minnesota play. I wasn't available to watch a lot of the games this year because unforeseen work obligations. But that team the Whitecaps are really good defensively.
Oh, they're fantastic. And it almost felt like a very similar game to the game they played at First Niagara. That game was 1-1 late. The Whitecaps scored in regulation with under 2 minutes left on a point shot from Lee Steckline to win that game 2-1. This game went to overtime, and the downside now too is you look at this Beauts team that exists, and with everyone really being on 1-year contracts, you hope that the same team comes back next year. I think this team really connected well with the fans. The building, and you can speak to this too, Justin, the building for that playoff game was just fantastic to be in. The fans love this team. This team loves the fans. It's really become a staple of the community at this point.
I think the atmosphere that's inside that building whenever the Beauts played home, I think it makes it very easy for Beauts players to stick around. And then a lot of the team too are very local, local or women are local. How many players in that team come from Nichols?
I mean,
Nichols
there's a few of them, a couple of them parked firmly on the top line as well.
Is pumping out some serious talent, women's talent, man. That's crazy.
So we will see how that goes, but I guess my final thought would be it was a great season for the Beauts. They were 3-3. They made a huge run, got a home playoff game, and took Minnesota to overtime on the road in the championship game. And I look forward to a hopeful 5th consecutive championship run. And the 4 straight championships is softened a little bit by the fact that, unlike the Bills, they did actually win one. Took down a Boston team in the process. So while we're on hockey here, guys, why don't we transition over to the other team here? The Sabres are playing hockey or something resembling it most of the time.
They were doing something.
They're out there. I thought they were never going to fucking score again. Holy crap, last week was bad. Steve went to the one good game on Sunday.
So
that
yeah,
was the
who
fun
saw
game
a
to be
win
at.
coming?
Yeah, that was a fun game, and there was some tongue in cheek because at the beginning of the game they talk about some of the sponsorships. If the Sabres scored 2 goals, and it wasn't just us, like everybody just kind of chortles at that. They scored 2 in the first period. They scored 3 in the first period. No, they scored 2 in the first period. But they looked good. And my big comment when we were just bantering a bit before the show started, I don't know how much you guys were able to watch. They have a second line that looks good, like a competent line that maybe most importantly is showing some chemistry. You have Erod, Sherry, and Nylander, who are all able, they can wheel. All 3 of them can fly. And shift after shift, they were noticeable. And Eichel's line was not. And that's okay, because you know what? Sometimes you're not going to be. And Eichel's line was out there against O'Reilly most of the time, even though they get the last change. But, it's okay. There was a night that the first line did not show up, and the second line looked phenomenal. They were great.
Yeah, but you can't count on your first line to be all your offense
Every night.
Yeah. 82 games.
Yeah.
The Sabres teams of, what was it, 05, 06, and 06, 07, they had multiple scoring lines.
Yeah, they had 4 lines that could score when push came to shove.
You had Briere and Drury and Vanek on the second line. That's where he made most of his career is being on that second line on those teams. He was not a first line player.
Roy and Stafford on the third line sometimes because you had Hesht on the top line and
I think the Sabres
Dumont.
I think at the back of the end, the Sabres solid third line was Roy, Finneganov, Vanek.
Yep.
The RAV line they're calling. Real quick, you said I want to poke at Phil Housley one more time if we have him the past few weeks.
I'm sorry, this doesn't save his job.
You just mentioned how Eichel's line was out there against O'Reilly's line a lot. Given they have the last change as the home team, that is just terrible coaching. God awful, terrible, pitiful coaching. What is he doing with that team? And at this point, do you want to say like he doesn't? It just doesn't matter. But no, you're as a coach, you gotta still, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's just infuriating. I'm so mad. It's just infuriating.
I don't want to change hard left, and I know you want to talk about Housley, Mike, but the first goal, because I don't want to forget about this, Zach Bogosian, I don't know if you saw it. He comes in over the line to the left point, and he brings the puck in. He drops the puck back. He then proceeds to go down below the goal line, around behind the net, comes back to the half wall, and gets the pass. And as soon as it happened, I saw someone knifing from the other side, and I said, find him. Because he was coming in like a hot knife through butter. I didn't know who it was at the time. Turns out it's my favorite Buffalo Sabre on the roster, Johan Larsson.
The legend.
Who, Bogosian, that may have been his best offensive shift this year. I know he had that sweet goal, where he just basically went behind the net, pulled it out front, and put it in on the backhand. What a shift by Bogo. And that's why I like him, because he does stuff like that.
Larsson
Big
from
fan.
Bogosian.
Yeah,
that's
the way we all drew
that
it up.
is not
made of, folks.
I don't know if I've ever thought I'd hear that one.
I'm one of the few players in the area that likes Larson as a player.
Yeah.
And the guy is super infuriating them because he plays some really good games sometimes, but it's very few and far between you see him. He's got a really good shot, and he's a good skater. But he's a really good defensive role. But
his awareness sometimes leads me to want more.
Sometimes, yeah. That's exactly what I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah, in his own end, there's times that he just doesn't. I don't know.
Like his talent is clearly there, and that's what makes it so frustrating. I'm kind of with you. I've always kind of liked Larson, maybe not as much as you do, but
I feel like he's regressed a little bit. I feel like he used to be a little more solid in the defensive end than he is now. I feel like it's a little bit of a regression.
There was that year that Riley got hurt, and then Larson was filling in as like top two
they
line
put Larson
centers.
against Crosby the next game.
And that part of the season, he was rolling. He was like a whole different player. And then he got scumbagged into the boards from behind by one of the Bruins defensemen. I think it was McQuaid. I forget.
I don't even remember.
He got scumbagged from behind, and he was hurt the rest of the season. He hasn't been the same ever since. But you see flashes this year. This is probably his best year he's had in a while. Him and Gernstein's finally playing in a solid fourth-line role. It's where they should be.
I like him penalty killing too. That's nice. But
Yeah.
I mean, the other part of it is like Larson was first-round pick, right? And he comes back in the was it the Blues trade from Miller?
Yeah, Miller.
Ryan Miller. And it was one of those things that how many times have we heard that this guy coming back who's a former first-round pick is going to be good?
He's
they sell him.
He's the bull.
Mhm.
He's going to be good.
And is Tage Thompson the new version of that? I don't think so. I like Tage a lot. I might be like the way you are with Larson. I might be with Tage.
I don't get people hate Tage.
He
He
was not a first-round pick, by the way.
Tage was not.
No,
Larson.
I'm talking about Larson.
Oh, okay. Really?
Larson was not a first-round pick.
I thought he was a late first-round
56th
pick.
overall.
Okay. Well, then
That would
I'll
be
just shut
second.
up and stop talking.
No, you're good. I was
I'm
curious.
glad you corrected me. Don't get me wrong.
I don't get the hate for Tage. People say
He's 21 years old. You don't know what his ceiling is.
he may not be ready, but I could see
Yeah.
it. He's got some insane skill. His reach, the way he moves for a 6'5", 21-year-old ice hockey player. Usually, when you're that tall, you're like a baby deer, still growing into your body. Is he 20 or 21?
21.
My big frustration with him, and this is why I'm okay with it, is I need him to hit the net more.
Yeah,
But I'm okay that
he's got a
like,
wicked shot.
exactly. Like it's not that I need him. Like it's not that he needs to be taught better decisions or what. Like in his own end, there's times that might be the case. But like if the worst thing about his game right now is that he misses the net, I'm not mad about that because he's got a wicked shot. And when he does start hitting the net, sign me up. I'm in.
He's got a unique skill set. And next year, when it comes down to it, push comes to shove, if it comes down to him and C.J. Smith, I want Tage on the team.
Jump off, dude. You
I
had to look me right in the eyes when you said that,
did.
you ass.
I don't get it. I don't see.
This is the guy that says, I like Johan Larson, but C.J. Smith, fuck that guy. What are we doing here? Like
he skates fast. He skates fast. He doesn't bring.
He's scored every time he's been called up. He's made a
I don't
play.
think it's that good. I don't see it yet. I'm not giving up.
When they have called him up and given him people to play with, he's scored. This is not
mostly noticeable, in my
but it's
opinion.
not like he's played well and just he has scored. He has gotten assists. Like he actually shows up on the score sheet.
Smith is still just kind of a guy to me. He's a good mid-level winger. If you look at who I'm excited for next year coming up from Rochester, it's not him. I'm more excited for Olofsson or Nylander.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Jeff said.
I don't know if I'm more
say.
excited about Tage, but I'm
Well,
more.
see, Tage brings a unique skill set.
My favorite memory from
But
last
the
week
thing
was when
is,
Tage got a breakaway and then went for a wraparound.
Well, the thing is, Thompson should have been given some time to season in Rochester instead
Yes.
of
Probably
honing his skill set in Buffalo.
And it's not his fault that he got thrust
Right.
into
I
the
do
service a
agree
little
with
early,
that.
but
I do agree.
yeah, I would agree that he probably should not have started the year up here.
I just don't see why he gets so much hate on Twitter at senior games. I just don't see why people get
Him and Middlestat both make 2 or 3 plays a game that when you see it, Middlestat struggled last night hard. He turned the puck over a bunch, but when he did, like one time he took the puck from his own blue line and wound it up and made a move through the neutral zone and ripped into the middle right between the face-off dots to the slot and took a shot. I'm like, that is what he can do.
He's a boy.
100%. The dude was in high school 2 years
He's
ago.
a
Like,
boy.
yeah.
He's gonna wait till he's a full-grown man.
I
He'll
agree.
Be unstoppable.
Yeah, and there's a lot. I think the game's still fast for him because you see the difference when he's playing in juniors and he's the fastest player on the ice mentally and physically and how he dominates. And you aren't in juniors anymore. Like now, I don't dislike Middlestat at all. I feel the same way about Tage. I have a question that I'm totally ripping from a hockey morning show. Does Alex Nylander start next year on the big squad?
I think he should have this year. I think
at this point, if you don't want to keep him on the big squad, then just get rid of him.
I think
because
he was a
there's
numbers
nothing
victim
more you're
this
getting
year.
down there.
We talked about it at the start of the season. I think it's a numbers victim.
Mm-hmm.
And it came down to him
It
getting
should've
more
been
playing
him and
time
not
in
Tage.
Rochester. That's what it came down to, But I was gonna segue to Nylander here soon. If I'm an apologist for any player and the Sabres, I'm an Alex Nylander apologist. Hard. I think the guy has all the tools. He's got some insane hands, a really good shot. He's a good skater. It could be lazy. But when he got called up, people were just dogging on him right away. He had his first shift. People were like, fuck this guy. He sucks. Trade him. The guy played 7 NHL games before he got called up. The dude has a chance in the NHL. They're different, way different leagues, the NHL. And when he's up here, the first game, he made some good choices with the puck, especially in transition. Made some adjustments, and they'll get the puck out and the move. Showed some really good hands in tight spaces. His hands are really, really good.
Exhibited last night, not 2 assists, 2 primary assists for Alex Nylander last night.
I think the first game he did look lost quite a bit in the offensive zone, but I think it's a comfortability thing. And I think it happens to him a lot. I remember I watched almost every Team Sweden game when they were here in the juniors. And the first game, the same thing. You could tell he was very good, but looked lost in the offensive zone. But once he got comfortable, the second or third game, you couldn't touch him.
They've struggled. The Sabres have struggled so much with odd man rushes. Like, I can literally hear in my head, like, here comes, pick 2 players in on a 2-on-1, and Sherry lost the puck to the corner. Like, what? Like, that doesn't, 2-on-1s in hockey are layups. If you remember 05-06, if the Sabres got a 2-on-1, it was in the back of the net. Exhibited by the Kings game when they won 10-1. It was a 2-on-1 by Dan Paille and Yuri Novotny. And it was a perfect 2-on-1. Paille saucers it over to Novotny on the back door, who claps it in. Like, it was just a tip in at the crease.
I always liked Paille.
And the Sabres, did he win a cup with Boston? The Sabres, consistently have struggled on a 2-on-1. Well, yesterday, they get a 2-on-1 with Nylander and Sherry. And Nylander comes in, waits out the defender, sends it across the ice. Sherry wrists it home. It wasn't a one-timer, but guess what? You know who may have led the best 2-on-1 that the Sabres have had in a long time? Alex Nylander.
You know what the Sabres never do in 2-on-1s is pass the puck early. They always want to carry it down as low as possible, and if they don't pass it down,
then they shoot it wide
down
because
the
they're out of
fucking
room.
icing line and throw it across the ice.
They got a terrible angle shot, or the defensive has the easiest play in a cross-crease pass.
Yep.
But Nylander identified the open ice, passed it
early. Correct, before they got to the slot.
And Sherry had so much space.
Yeah, and then he went high cheese. It was a beautiful shot.
It's there so often for the Sabres, they just never do it. They want to go for the pretty tap-in.
Yeah. They're predictable almost on those plays. They do the same thing every time.
Wired.
A great shot.
Wired.
It was like a pure goal scorer right there.
He was on the 1 foot. Just had the 1 foot on the ice like they do before he shot it. Like, he already had all his weight on his front foot, leaning on his stick. Like, there was no shift of the feet. He was already down on it. It was good.
It's really funny because this past week the Sabres went 3 games without scoring a goal, and here we are raving about it.
Yeah, I'm about to say, you guys are talking about this game a lot. I was at the game against Pittsburgh on Thursday, and I wanted to jump off the Harbor Club. It was absolutely miserable to be in there. That's the first Sabres game of my life. I'm almost 28 years old. The first game of my life I've ever left early. That game had no hope. It wasn't fun. They weren't playing well. Goddamn Vladimir Sabatka on the top line because Jack was suspended, and apparently Sabatka was the best guy to play with Skinner. Every part of that game was abject misery. But I'm glad that Connor Sherry scored a nice goal on Sunday and made it all feel better.
Happy Nylander was finally looking nice.
I'm glad they kept him up after Jack came back.
I was really worried about that. But that's all I got for today. In terms of Buffalo sports, but
I think that the reason that we're talking about yesterday is we've looked for hope for so long, and we got a glimmer of it yesterday. So
we do have one more thing we want to talk about, Justin.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are listening to us talk about the ups and downs of the Sabres season, we've had a lot of up and down seasons lately, and barring some sort of crazy set of circumstances, the Buffalo Sabres will not make the playoffs again this year.
They're not mathematically eliminated
They're
yet?
not yet.
Jeez.
In spite of their best efforts.
If they win every game, they have a 3% chance to make it. # hold on hope.
It's not completely over yet.
You should not have said that.
We're assuming
there are going to be people that are going to literally hold on hope just because of that.
Well,
what's wrong with that?
We
Mike?
can't stop
What if I'm
them.
holding on hope? Sorry, Jeff.
No, you're good.
Why would you want to hold on hope that they're going to win, 9 straight games?
They did it once before.
The best
By
the best thing is that having that streak again gives them a 3% chance. That's how bad the middle part is.
question:
Yes.
better chance the Sabres don't score for 9 games or win all 9 games?
Oh, that's the first one, 100%.
Don't score.
Is it 9 games? We're just clicking on 9 here. Is it 9 games?
I think
It's something right around there.
I think yesterday was game 73.
Looking it up and looking it up. Gonna awkwardly segue here. The Buffalo Sabres are 31, 32, and 9. That is 72 games.
72, so 11 left.
10 left.
10 left. Okay.
Including 82 is 11, I believe.
Whatever. They got a few games left.
The point is they're not going to make the playoffs.
No, 10.
And we here at the 716 Sports Podcast have
Steve is counting
taken
on his
some
fingers.
I
time
literally counted on my fingers. Shut up.
to create a little bit of a bracket to soften the blow for the rest of the season. So starting here today, we're releasing this podcast on Tuesday. On our social media, we are releasing the bracket for Buffalo Sabres Drought Madness. That means that a few times a day we're going to put out a matchup of some of our favorite or least favorite, maybe iconic, memorable moments of the Buffalo Sabres playoff drought. And we want all of you to chip in with us to vote for what your favorites, or, again, whether it's your favorite, the most memorable. I think we're going for most memorable. What is the standout moment of the drought?
Good or bad?
Right.
Infamous.
When you think of this stretch of Sabres hockey, what is the moment that you would put on a picture? Like if you had a timeline of team history, what is the moment that you would want associated with this era?
So I think this is 2010
to present.
2010 and 11 is the last time they made the playoffs.
So it's 2011-12 to present.
Yes.
So we're going to start putting those out there. We're finishing the brackets. We will release those in full tomorrow, or at least the first matchups in full tomorrow.
We'll release the whole bracket tomorrow.
Yeah. And then we're going to have some matchups out there on our Twitter, on our Facebook probably as well. We would really love your feedback. Share it with everyone. Tell us what your favorite moments are and why you're sad they didn't make the list. And we'll be talking more about the winners of the early round matchups on future podcasts. So we're going to do the first couple rounds entirely based on your votes, and then we will talk about those moments that make it to the final 16 starting next week.
It's going to be fun.
I'm really looking forward
to
it.
doing this show.
It's been cooking for a little bit.
Yeah.
Do we have a? I know we said this was last thing. Do we know what seed the women got? Did they select yet?
They selected today.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean.
They leaked the bracket early. It's all I saw was people talk about the fact they leaked the bracket early, and they're playing the same time as the men on Thursday.
Half hour later.
Congrats to the men for the 6th seed, and the ladies. I don't know.
I'm trying to look it up right now. I actually did not.
What time do the men play on Thursday?
4:30.
They play at 4:30. I'm a bad fan here.
Men play at.
They are a
men
10
play at 4:30.
seed.
Women play at 5.
Yeah, they are a 10 seed. They're taking on Rutgers Friday at 4:30.
I do not know a lot about the Rutgers.
So
wait a
minute.
program.
You said they play at the same time
I
on
thought they did.
Thursday. You're throwing me for a loop, Jeff.
Clearly, I don't remember when the UB men play. Don't worry about it.
UB Women's Hoops will be a number 10 seed in the upcoming NCAA Women's Basketball Tournament and will take on number 7 Rutgers this Friday, 4:30 p.m. ESPN2 in Storrs, Connecticut.
Stores.
That's painful.
What's our Twitter interaction question for the week?
I don't know. The ice cream one was good.
I literally pulled that out of my ass last week.
What is your favorite all-time Buffalo Sabres third jersey? And why is it the red cross swords jersey? Or is it the Winter Classic jersey from a couple years ago? Or the infamous Turdberger jersey?
Or the one that said Buffalo on it.
Or the one that says Buffalo? I actually like that one.
I like that one with the stitched numbers on the
That was a
back.
nice sweater.
We'll ask you guys, what's your favorite Buffalo Sabres third jersey of all time? Let
You're
us
right,
know.
Jeff. They both play on Friday.
Okay.
Men
thank
at 4, women at 4:30.
Okay. It was there in my head somewhere. I just messed up the times. Thank you for listening, everyone. We will be back here next week with a Drought Madness episode and recapping everything that happened this week. Men's and women's basketball tournaments, hockey. The Sabres are still playing. God help us all.
Bandits.
Back in Bandit land on Saturday night against the Toronto Rock. We'll talk about that as well. As always, like, share, subscribe to the podcast. You can find us again on Twitter at 716 Sport Podcast or on Facebook at 716 Sports Podcast. Everyone, until next week, thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you real soon.